started as an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was sipping my coffee in my office, high above the bustling streets, overlooking the skyline that I had spent years building my business around. The sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, glinting off the glass panels that I had personally chosen for their sleek, modern look. Everything was calm, peaceful, until the phone rang. On the other end was a frantic voice, unmistakably that of my neighborhood HOA president, Miss Karen, who somehow managed to sound both indignant and panicked at the same time. She claimed, in her usual imperious tone, that my office space, my carefully designed, fully owned property, was somehow in violation of community guidelines, and that she was authorized to take immediate action. I raised an eyebrow, amused. Immediate action? I asked, letting my calm mask her absurdity. Karen, this is my office. I own it. Her voice climbed an octave. That doesn't matter. We received reports that your office operations are interfering with community protocols. I'm calling 911 if you don't comply. And just like that, I realized she had already dialed. The line clicked as she shouted her complaints at the dispatcher. I could hear the chaos as the operator tried, in vain, to understand her claims. In that moment, I couldn't help but marvel at the audacity. The HOA, a group of self-appointed neighborhood enforcers, were calling the police to assert control over a property that wasn't theirs by any stretch of the imagination. I decided to pay them a little visit. I grabbed my coat and stepped into the elevator, letting my mind race through possibilities. My office complex wasn't just a single building. It was a collection of spaces I had purchased, renovated, and rented out to small businesses, all legally under my ownership. I had every document, every title, every signature to prove it. Yet here was Karen, striding around with misplaced authority, threatening law enforcement over a matter she clearly did not understand. When I arrived at the HOA's main office, the scene was almost comical. Karen was pacing frantically, clutching her clipboard like a weapon, while several other board members looked on, uncertain. Their faces shifted between irritation, confusion, and fear the moment they saw me walk in. "Good morning, Karen," I said, my tone sweetly laced with calm authority. "How's the 911 call going?" Her face flushed red. You can't just. This is my community. My authority." I leaned on the reception desk, smiling. "Your authority doesn't extend past the ornamental gates at the front. Everything you see here, every office, every corridor, belongs to me. The land, the building, the signage, you name it. I own it outright. I even manage the leases for the small businesses inside, some of which pay more than you make in a year." A tense silence filled the room. Then, almost instinctively, she tried to regain control. "I was only enforcing rules, community safety." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Rules? Karen, the only rules that apply here are mine. And calling 911 over a non-existent violation doesn't count as enforcement. It counts as harassment." By now, the dispatcher's voice was faintly audible over the phone in her hand, asking for clarification. I calmly handed her a copy of the property deed and the official HOA zoning limits, all stamped, signed, and notarized. "Read them," I suggested. "Take your time. The truth can be hard to swallow. I understand." Minutes later, Karen slumped into a chair, her authority evaporating like mist in the morning sun. The other board members avoided my gaze, their mouths dry as they realized the extent of her blunder. I stood up, patting the desk lightly. This is a lesson in humility and in understanding the difference between perceived power and actual ownership. Before leaving, I made a note to inform the local authorities about the frivolous 911 call. Misusing emergency services wasn't just irresponsible. It could have legal consequences. As I walked back to my office, I could hear the remnants of whispered apologies and muttered complaints behind me. Back in my space, I poured another cup of coffee and leaned back, looking out over the city. The sunlight glinted off the windows, just as before, only now it seemed brighter. I had weathered many challenges in building this complex, but this little HOA incident had been strangely satisfying. power, I realized, was only as legitimate as the law and the truth allowed it to be. And as for Karen and her board, let's just say I updated the locks on my office entrances and installed a few extra security cameras for my own amusement. Because sometimes the best way to assert control is to simply own it.